It's Thursday, January 12th, 2023 at 9:08 a.m. I hereby call this meeting of the trustees of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust to order. This meeting is being held live and in person at the Memorial Hall and Town Hall, 34 West Main Street. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed by Westborough TV. I've shared the agenda on the screen. Following the call to order, we'll be approving 2 sets of minutes. We'll receive an update on the litigation and status of the residents of Westborough Station. We'll then go into a discussion of potential warrant articles for the annual town meeting, followed by a review of the clean version of the RFP related to the redevelopment at 3 Baylor Avenue. And preparing that for review by town council. After that, we will ask for 2 other project updates related to Endicott Drive and Rogers Road, if there are any updates for there. We have, if there's any additional business or discussion, issues or correspondence, we'll cover that, and then we will adjourn. So thank you for joining us here today. Okay, and Ken Salzman is joining us remotely. As he is feeling a little under the weather. So welcome, Ken. I apologize, I didn't realize you were waiting to be admitted to the meeting remotely. You're good morning,
Good morning,
Ken.
Good morning.
Okay, great. And Ed,
Hey, folks. I just figured it was better that I didn't show up.
no, we're okay. I explained that you're feeling a little under the weather, so you're joining us remotely. Ed Bain is
Yep.
not going to be able to make it. He is traveling and is 14 time zones ahead of us, or 13 time zones ahead of us. So he's unable to make it today. So moving forward, first item on our agenda is the approval of minutes from November 10th, 2022 and December 8th, 2022.
I have a question.
Yes.
I was not present at December 8th. Am I allowed to vote on it?
You are still allowed to vote on it. If you're more comfortable, you can abstain.
Okay. So I make a motion to approve the minutes for November 10th, but I'm not going to make a motion to approve the minutes for December 10th, for December 8th.
Should I make the motion? Are we doing that one first?
Oh, she made the motion.
Motion is second. We can dispose of that one.
Are there any comments on the November 10th minutes?
No.
No? Okay. All in favor? And Ken? I need a verbal.
Yes.
Okay. So it
Approved.
is 6:06 being present. Okay, I need a motion for the December 8th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for December 8th.
Second.
Okay, any corrections, comments, discussions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And Ken?
Aye.
Okay. I think technically we're supposed to do roll call vote, but
Yes.
he's a remote attendee. Okay, next on the agenda. I'm just updating the minutes as we run here, notes here, is an update on the residences Westborough Station. So, for the public's benefit, as everyone is aware, formerly known as Charlestown Meadows, the residence at Westborough Station is an apartment development of 120 units, 24 of which have an affordable restriction on them. The owner of the property is attempting to revert those units to market rate. The trust previously hired a consultant to look to see if there were programs available to continue the subsidy on those units, or to actually have a new subsidy on those units to keep them affordable. What we learned is that no, because under a Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court ruling called Ardmore, unless, regardless of the subsidies tied to financing, the zoning, that variance that allows those apartments don't meet the underlying zoning for the property, and therefore until such time that that property complies to underlying zoning, the affordability restrictions need to, remain in place. The developer is not very fond of that, and so the town of Westborough has taken the developer to court. In land court, the developer, property owner tried to remove it, or actually successfully removed it to federal court, claiming that Ardmore violated provisions of the U.S. Constitution. That was reviewed, and that was denied, and the case was remanded back to land court. The town made motions known as stipulations, and asked the court to order stipulations to preserve the affordability of all of the units until the case is resolved. And that order was issued on December 20th of 2022. And so at this point, through December of 2023, any of the affordable leases that come up for renewal will be renewed for at least 1 year at current affordability requirements. Additionally, the affordability of all 24 units needs to be maintained. So if a unit becomes vacant, the new tenant moves in at the affordable rent. It can't revert to market.
Oh, I missed that part. That's great.
So that's in the order as well. So I sent out to everyone a copy of the order of stipulation, as well as a draft letter to the residents that we would send out as we've communicated with the residents jointly with Westborough Youth and Family Services. If we can, a draft letter that we could send out letting them know of this order and being very clear that Northland will continue to renew leases expiring in 2023 at current allowed subsidized rates until the lawsuit is settled. And so that's the update. Any questions? Or?
Yeah, I think it'd be great to send a letter out, subject to review by our council. May want to send a copy of it to Northland, let them know we sent the letter out, again, maintain, I'm assuming our council will agree that that's acceptable, and just maintain some kind of relationship with Northland. That we're not, they're not surprised when the tenants get the letter.
Okay.
The first word should be "as" in the letter.
Yes.
Ah.
Very good. I've looked at it a dozen times.
But otherwise, I am very pleased that this is the current status. And so I'm very much in favor of this letter going out to the residents at Westborough Station. I am less inclined to say that it needs to go to Northland. At the same time, I feel like, sure.
Due diligence.
Yeah.
I'll ask council.
Okay. I mean, this is a public meeting. We're sharing with the public that this letter is going out to the residents. So, in effect, they're informed, but,
Yep. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I don't think we need a vote on that.
No, I think it's
operational, so we'll, I'll send that off to, our council on this case and, the town's council on this case, and, if he needs to wordsmith it, he will, and then as Ed's traveling, I'll contact Kira,
Yep.
the Youth and Family Services,
Yep.
and have it sent. Okay, great. So next on the agenda is a discussion of potential warrant articles for annual town meeting. If, I know you want to chat on this, but just a quick update. If you watched the select board meeting on Tuesday night, there was a walk through the draft one of the warrant for annual town meeting. There are 2 articles currently on the warrant that have an impact on the housing trust. The first will be a transfer of funds to the trust, and the second relates to the Community Preservation Act in implementation with the Community Preservation Committee. So the first item, I want to say it's Article 5, the numbers might change. When as Del Webb Chauncey Lake, or Lake Chauncey, was developed and was initially going through the special permit, there was mitigation offered that in relation to reducing the number of planned affordable units in the development, and that is the amount of 1.4. And it was set up that if Pulte did not construct net new affordable units elsewhere within Westborough within a certain time frame, then they would pay the town money so we could subsidize those units being built. That is a total of $1.4 million. It's to be made in 3 payments. That time has expired, and I believe the first payment has been made to the town, which is holding it. That is, as mitigation, that can only be used for development of affordable housing. And so that first article, they didn't plug the number in yet, because by the time town meeting comes, there might be 2 payments, depending on how quickly the building happens this spring. But that, there will be a vote to transfer that money to the trust. And I expect the town manager's statement on that will be that this is actually, that mitigation was actually one of the triggers for wanting to create a trust.
Yep.
Because the trust is the only mechanism the town has to hold money specifically for affordable housing. And so that transfer will happen. If it's one payment, whatever 1.4 million is divided by 3, it's so 444,000, something along those lines, plus or minus. If they've made a second payment, it would be twice that. So that's on there. The second article is the creation of the Community Preservation Committee, which is the committee that will evaluate and recommend to town meeting how funds collected under the Community Preservation Act will be spent. And the proposed bylaw for that will include a trustee from the Housing Trust as one of the members of that committee to be involved in that process. So those 2 are on the warrant.
The money transfer, is the sponsor of that the Housing Trust, or is the sponsor the Select Board, or?
I believe it will be the Select Board, or it can be joint. I'll ask.
It might be appropriate for us to be at least a joint sponsor or something like that. And then again, I would suggest we don't need to do anything now, but over the next couple of months, we need to figure out how to socialize the warrant article and prepare to defend it and that sort of thing. Just prepare, we'll have to go to rubber chicken circuit.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think this is.
It's just good process to.
Yeah,
to do
and
along.
I can talk with the town manager about expectations of us doing that, or that coming from the town side, since it's a.
I mean, we probably ought to do some of it, because, again, it gives us an opportunity to
Yeah.
advocate and socialize. Last time around, we went to the Senior Center Committee. We went to the Finance Committee. We went to anybody who'd talk. The Planning Board probably, just to kind of socialize the whole thing. And also what that does is it surfaces any potential citizen concerns that we're
Right.
prepared to defend, or deal with any concerns that folks have. And it's not unusual for folks to come to town meeting not totally in possession of the facts, and to raise issues that aren't factually accurate, and you need to be able to defend that.
That is true.
That happens occasionally.
It does.
Occasionally.
Not
It does.
very often, but.
Occasional.
Okay. So I'll reach out
Sure.
to.
Find out from folks of how we go about doing that.
Okay.
Can we confirm that town meeting is March 18th? Because,
It is.
can I just publicly ask that whoever is in charge of the website, put it on the website, the town website, like in big bold letters?
Yeah, let me look it up.
Because I had to go through,
Tuesday, the 14th of March.
No, that's the election day.
so So it's the second Saturday after the first Tuesday in March. So to me, that's the 18th. But I just want to confirm that that's.
I will confirm.
I feel like that should be widely distributed information and not difficult to get.
It should not be difficult to get, and it should be widely disseminated, yes.
So,
Okay. So, anything else with respect to warrant articles?
Yeah, I mean, we gotta decide whether we go and ask for any property transfers, because
You speak in,
Sure,
you just speak into the mic so
we
that-
need to see if we go for any property transfers, because transferring property from the town to the trust requires town meeting action. So you basically get a chance twice a year to do that. One concern I have is, I got a bunch of, I mean, with the transfer of money, we now have a substantial pool of funds. Probably around 2 million, or, I've lost track of the numbers, Ed can give us the numbers, but got a large amount of money, and essentially only one project on the horizon that we can, spend that money in, for the benefit of the community. So we really need to try and get some more projects up there, and more opportunities to take advantage of that housing money. We have been talking about this Endicott Drive property. Still a lot of issues, but I went to I had talked to the rec director in the fall, and the rec director in the fall said, hey, everything's fine. We don't have any plans for that property, but we need to go to the rec commission. We also went to the select board in the fall and got their agreement, continue with the due diligence and such, no known issues. The rec commission invited us to come back in December to talk to the commission at large, and they were not supportive. The commission agrees that they don't have any plans for using the property in the foreseeable future. They don't currently have plans to do anything with it, but they're reluctant to give my words, not theirs. Can't quote them directly because I didn't transcribe it. They basically saying, it's so difficult to acquire property that when we have control of this piece of property, we really don't want to cede control of the property. Just because we don't currently have a plan. Oh, by the way, we don't think it's a good location for affordable housing. And, I did not raise the issue, but they did not seem to be aware that they really don't have control of the property. The property is under the control of the select board. It happens to be that a portion of it has been used by the rec commission for some recreation facilities. So my suggestion is that we need to continue with the project and put it on the warrant. And, give the community the opportunity to choose how they'd like to dedicate the use of the property in the future. I have no idea whether the community will support. I don't know if the select board will support that. Don't know if the community will support it. But my personal experience is that whenever you go trying to get a piece of property transferred from one authority to another in the community, the authority who currently thinks they have control never wants to let go, because it's so difficult to find a piece of property and so difficult to get it transferred. The second thing is, if you just focus on the rec commission has been, we've dedicated a goodly chunk of the property over at the state hospital to recreation purposes. So if the Recreation Commission would prefer not to release this piece of property, maybe we could get them to release their claim, if you will, on some of the property at the state hospital, which quite honestly would be a better place to build affordable housing. I don't know, but again, what I'm suggesting is that we need to continue down the path and bring the issue before the select board, bring the issue before the community at large, and let's find out what the issues are and how we go about acquiring sites to build, or supporting developers to acquire sites, which is what we're really doing.
Hank, I fully support that recommendation that we bring that to the town for consideration and vote, because I think that you're right, that this needs to be a community vote in terms of I understand that, and I totally hear what you're saying about the rec commission would like to, you know, it's hard to maintain property, and so they are wanting to hold on to this particular piece of property, but they don't actually have rights to it necessarily, so, so we need to bring it to the community for an ask.
Well, I don't know, I don't disagree with that, but it does bring, the overall question is how we're gonna get more properties. And I know the one we have came from like a tax taking. Is that common? Do we have any more? Is there somewhere we're supposed to be investigating
I
this?
haven't checked it in the last 9 months, but back, about a year ago, I had a list of the delinquent tax properties. There were not a lot of them. There was only one or two where the delinquency was in the tens of thousands of dollars. And this was the only one, the Baylor Ave was the only one that was going into land court. So we'll do that again, but I don't believe we do a lot of tax takings. I mean, people do get in arrears, things get confused, but usually the property is so valuable that people will go and if they really have financial problems, they'll sell the property and pay the taxes. It's very, I believe it's unusual to actually go to auction or to go through the land court tax taking.
It's also only one property at a time.
Yeah, it's one,
So-
there is some other property, there's a couple of, over the period of time, you know, we've identified one or two single lots, but there's nothing big out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I expect there probably is, but it's really hard to find.
So I agree with moving forward with Endicott. My question is, are we ready to ask for the transfer of the property now, or do we need a little more as far as the exact subdivision? Because we would have to, the planning board would need to subdivide the property.
Yep.
We haven't started that process yet. Additionally, from a community engagement standpoint, I think it would be wise for us to, as we have, first we finalize what we plan to do there. Is it 2 units? Is it 3? We have renderings of what they could look like. I think that's enough to work with from that standpoint. Agreement from the planning board as far as, how the property's divided, and effectively this would be a friendly 40B because to avoid zoning variances, and we need to make sure that we're not creating an overburden with wetlands mitigation and protection. And at that point, having, scheduling an open meeting with the abutters and the community of that neighborhood. It is a small, isolated neighborhood, and have a conversation with them about the plans to garner their, hopefully support, if not at least awareness and input. So that I think timing-wise, to go through those steps, this might be better targeted for October town
Yep,
meeting.
I'm okay with that too. I mean, just this morning, I'm gonna leave here early because I've finally been able to line up the chairman of the zoning board of appeals, the town planner, and the director of community development to have a conversation about how would you recommend we go about permitting the property? How would you recommend we go about setting the sizing for partitioning the property, et cetera? So I don't have any problem targeting for the fall. I just wanted to make sure we made that as a conscious decision as opposed to me in my closet.
No, understood. So,
That's fair.
so we'll proceed in that direction.
Sure, proceed that way.
And as we get to other business, there's some other properties I'll bring up and suggest some step forwards there as well. The other potential warrant article, again, a reminder that the Pulte development has 2 funds. One was that $1.4 million of mitigation that's built into their special permit, and the other was for the variance from the ZBA. We have received, the town has graciously voted to transfer the first 3 payments that Pulte made into that fund to the trust. That's a total of about $1.9 million. Some of which we've spent on very good things and on our processes and on the 3 Baylor Avenue project. Pulte has made an additional 2 payments into that fund. So the question is, would we want to ask for some or all of that money? At this point in time, my feeling on that is we don't have a specific use defined, and at this point, that money can be used for affordable housing and other projects for seniors. As no other projects have been defined and the senior needs assessment is still in process, there's no rush.
Right.
There's no need to ask for it in March. And that if we have projects that we would allocate that money to further along come October, that would be more appropriate.
Agreed.
Yep, I agree. I think that's the right approach.
Okay. Any thoughts, Ken?
I'm listening. I don't have any. I'm just absorbing what you just talked about. I don't have any suggestions or at this point in time. I'm thinking about it.
Okay, great, thank you. Just want to make sure that we didn't miss you if you had any comments. You can also raise your hand and wave, we'll see you. Okay, so next item on the agenda is what's now labeled version 0.0 of the RFP. I changed it from draft to version because we'll edit, if we make any edits today, it'll become 0.1 and that will go to town council. So the goal for today is, do we feel there are any other changes that we need to make to the RFP before it goes to town council for review and edits? We will get edits and recommendations from town council, and therefore we'll have at least one more round of changes to discuss, where also things that we feel might need altering could be made as well. So.
Yeah, I was able to read it before the meeting. I can't read it now. And I thought it encompassed all the conversations we had, all the concerns we had. It even lists some questions for the town council. So I would move to that this is ready for town council.
Yep, I'm comfortable. We've got a reasonable RFP.
Yeah.
And again, when the RFP goes out to potential bidders, you may get a couple of questions coming back that we'll have to deal with, but we've got enough to go ahead and go get proposals.
Okay. And any other comments? Because I actually have one that occurred to me this morning as I was rereading the minutes I wrote for a prior meeting that I've been working on, and that is Section 8 in our discussion in reviewing the RFP. It's a change I missed when I prepared this draft. The draft currently reads in Section 8 that we're providing a draft schedule, and our discussion was that we should ask the respondents to provide a high-level schedule with key milestones.
Agree with that, yep.
And so,
Maybe change it to is to be provided?
yeah, well, we're going to say, please provide this,
Yeah.
right?
Great.
And then that would, I can make that change, and then if there are no other changes for folks, be ready for town council. Okay.
Yeah, if there's any chance town council can get it back to us before our February meeting, that'd be great. I don't know how fast they can work, but
We'll ask. They should work, so.
I would expect it's not a particularly complicated task for the attorneys who are familiar with real estate.
No. And this type of sale of property,
It's
property, their templates
it's
and things.
kind of standard
A lot of this
sort
is
of stuff,
boilerplate, but the request to town council would be one to review the RFP and also to provide a draft purchase and sale agreement.
Okay.
And one of the questions is the stipulations about affordability, timing, the land, whether it's a separate land development agreement or it's built into the PNS, provide that information as well as a mechanism for recourse if the project doesn't move forward as reasonably as planned, that we would have the ability to bring back the property and
Yeah, but usually you put a, you usually put something in there that says they have to start construction within a period of time, otherwise the property's subject to being brought back to us.
Right, so, but I'll let the legal eagles
Yeah, I
figure
understand.
out the, you know,
The lawyers will
heretofores
figure
and
out how to write
henceforths
that
and
up so that
theretofores
Enforceable.
of all the legal stuff. Okay. Okay, so no comments here. Ken, did you have any comments or?
No, it looked good. And I agree with your comments on section 8.
Okay, excellent, then we'll move forward to that. We are ahead of schedule today.
Fantastic.
This is good. Okay, great. Let me just make a quick note here. Okay, so next on the agenda is project updates. First is Endicott Drive.
Yeah, and the next step for me is to go this afternoon, this morning, talk to the planning folks to try and get their recommendations on how to petition and permit the property. Coming out of that, we'll probably end up figuring out that we have to go back and do some more engineering. We'll do that, and then I think, Alan, your suggestion that we start putting together a package to kind of socialize it, maybe starting with the Board of Selectmen, just so that they know what we're doing.
Yep.
Before we go out to the community at large, that we go down that path and target ourselves towards trying to be on the town meeting warrant for fall town meeting.
Okay. I guess one of the questions, and I know the team, the town's planning team, and has done this in the past for other potential developments, is could we ask them to give us a maximum envelope?
Right.
Where they say, so long as what you're building is,
Right.
you know, within these boundaries and under this height, if they want to put a height restriction in as well.
Right.
So we're not going to put up a 3-story or 5-story building there. That you'll get permits, right?
Yeah, well, that's part of what we'll have the conversation. We'll start today, and my sense is it'll take more than one conversation, but we'll get them to, really like to get them to help us draw lot lines and, you know, lay down what would be the criteria that we would go in with, asking for either a friendly 40B or a variance.
Okay.
My guess is that they're gonna finally conclude the friendly 40B is the way to go, but I don't know.
Okay. And then the other question would be when, their advice on when would be the appropriate time to have an initial conversation and public meeting with the planning board.
Right.
Okay. Cool. Next up, Rogers Road.
Not making a lot of progress. We started, again, their board had said they didn't want to support bringing a developer in at this point in time to try and, you know, build additional facilities there. So we started down a path of doing individual one-on-one interviews with board members. We did have an interview with one board member and learned a lot about about their operations and how they work. I mean, kind of the real quick summary is that the Housing Authority Board is very operational, where they're really into running this business day to day. They perceive themselves, and probably are, substantially understaffed. I think they're managing around 200 units and
110.
110, okay.
Right.
And they have no full-time staff. Their staff is all part-time. When they look at expanding in any way, shape, or form, they're saying, if we expand, we need to add staff. If we add staff, the finances, you know, we're already financially strapped. We get few or no subsidies. By the way, they don't, our housing authority doesn't accept Section 8 vouchers, so that restricts the availability of clients. When they get an opening, they're highly regulated in terms of how they run their business, what they can do, what they can't do. Particularly, a sticking point is tenant selection. The state gives them a list of potential tenants. So if they get an opening, they get a list of 20 or 30 tenants. they have to go to all of those potential tenants and get them to say yes or no. Usually the first pass, they'll say no, because many of the tenants aren't even close to living in Westborough. There's no local preference. So again, tenant selection often takes months. They end up with units that are empty for months at a time because they can't get tenants in. They don't have, they don't have the staff. They're concerned about expanding. There are some board members who just won't even consider giving up control of the site. And they just feel it's not the right time for them to try and expand their business. The environment's not there, they don't have the strength to do it, whatever. So that's kind of talking to one board member. Have not been able to schedule an interview with a second board member, not getting responses. I mean, I've sent 3 or 4 emails and not getting any responses, so we'll keep pursuing that, but it's gonna be a long road to partner with the Housing Authority.
Interesting, because a couple of things, because different ways forward, right? If the Housing Authority were to build or contract to build, where they maintain ownership of the property and expand the units under their management, then the revenue from those units would provide funding for them to increase their staff to be able to support the
Yep.
units, right? So there's a budget there, and that would need to be managed as part of the
Yep.
cost analysis of the project.
Yep.
Because there's a transition cost that would have to become part of the project because they don't have money in their operating budget, or they would need a grant from DHCD. Interestingly enough, while the state's preference is clearly that housing authorities don't build, Acton's public housing authority, just completed 57 units of townhomes, affordable, in a development, that they built. And so, one question is it worthwhile for one of us to reach out to Acton and say, hey, how'd you do that?
Sure, we can do that, sure.
And
Yep.
see, and maybe go back to the housing authority. My second thought is that even along those lines, if the housing authority said, okay, we know we'll get the money, we'll get full-time staff, we'll remove the threat of being merged into another housing authority by having additional units. One thing we could offer potentially is that they effectively contract and delegate the development work to the trust.
Yep.
So that they can continue focusing on their operations and not step so far out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And then the third option is where the property gets subdivided and the property gets sold to a developer who builds the affordable units. That would have no budgetary impact on the housing authority because they wouldn't be expanding.
Right.
Because the units would be under control of the developer, who would then have to manage the affordability on an ongoing basis. Typically, they contract with someone to do that. They could contract with the
Right.
housing authority, which means the housing authority would then have revenue to hire staff to meet the need, or the developer could do it that way. And I think, there is a fourth option that I'm not sure they would go for, which would be for the trust to acquire the property. And which would provide the housing authority with capital funds.
Yep.
But they would again they'd be relinquishing the control of the property, but they know that it would only be used for affordable housing.
Goodbye. Hey,
Okay.
watch that. I'm in a meeting. Oh, sorry.
One other detail that I forgot to mention, again, talking to one board member, the housing authority has a finance person that's a contract person. I don't know exactly who, and that person has offered the opinion that the housing authority can't afford to expand, that to develop the property, they couldn't make the finances work. And I asked if they had any documentation of that financial analysis, and they didn't.
Okay.
So I think, Alan, going forward, we ought to maybe think about paying ourselves, hiring consultants, or or engineers or whatever, and coming up with a proposal, maybe a financial analysis that says, here's what it takes to make it work, and maybe just a cursory site plan that says, here's how you'd fit, here's how you'd fit things on the properties that, and deal with the concerns folks have about environmental impacts and ability to build on the land and utility service and all that. We may want to just go and get proposals for folks to do that sort of work for us, and we take control, we take the leadership role in the project and bring them proposals. I don't, based on, we've been at this for about a year now, and the housing authority hasn't chosen to do a lot of leading.
No, and
It might be best if we, given their resource issues, and it's only a 4-person board, one of whom's the tenant rep,
right.
part-time ED, maybe we need to take the initiative in coming forward with a couple of proposals for them to look at and say, okay, this is what it takes to make it work. I mean, I think there's no way to make this work without them giving up control of the land at this point in time. I mean, somebody else is gonna end up having control of that. They may be able to do it with a 100-year lease or something, but they're not gonna be able to maintain site control and develop that property.
Right.
So that you can't
But-
get around, but you can come up with proposals that work inside that envelope.
Can we have a joint meeting? Because we're two town entities
can.
that have a similar mission. And so I just feel like, can we just all sit down at the same table and hash this out? I know that you've gone to their board,
Yep.
but I also feel like maybe we just need to have us all sit down at the same table and hash this out. And kind of present all of the different options and ask what it is that, because we have funds to potentially hire, as you're saying, Hank, a consultant to kind of figure this out for us. And so perhaps we just need to kind of offer up what it is that we can offer and ask, how do we make this work? Because as two town entities, we have the same goal of providing safe and affordable housing to
Yep.
folks in Westborough.
Understand?
And so, we have money, let's do this.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of reluctance from them, and I think we need to approach them very softly.
Yeah.
And, help them to understand that this, we want to make things better.
Yeah.
More bountiful for all of us, not more challenging.
Right, right.
So, I think approach is really important. But sitting down, I think, is a great idea with all of us there and all the minds together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a joint public meeting can be intimidating. For Leah's comment, I guess my thought was, if we reach out to Acton and learn how, as a housing authority, they're building new units, and see if that's a model that we could then bring and present to the housing authority as an option, where we can effectively, in our role as the housing trust, manage the take the burden of the development work off of them, because they are so focused on operational issues. If we know that, if we have some sense of what could be developed, and maybe it's as simple as going back to the one-stop shop and saying, give us the rectangle, right? And would you allow 4 or 5 or 6, 3, 4, 5 or 6 stories there, right? To know, so that when we have a joint meeting, it's, we both share the same mission.
Yeah.
We understand your concerns with operating budget, ability to expand and take on more, desire, hesitancy about control of the property. So, given those concerns, here are 3 or 4 options on a way forward where we get the housing units developed, and here's how each one addresses some. No one solution is going to address all of their concerns 100%, but present and say, here's how this addresses your concern.
Yeah.
These options don't increase your inventory or your burden. These options will, but provide you additional funds to be able to maintain and support it. And there's some advantages there. And then this one is and take sort of that approach before we look for the joint meeting.
I mean, I can go after the Acton Housing Authority and make contact and talk to them and learn what I can learn. I'm gonna suggest that someone with a somewhat less aggressive style of interfacing than myself.
Why You-
might want to take the lead in, you know, trying to talk to the ED over there and seeing if they're willing to do a joint meeting.
So maybe we do some background research again before we
Yeah, I can
approach
do-
that, try to simplify
I can do that,
things.
come
I
back
can-
next month with,
I can reach out to Senator Eldridge, because that's in his district, and he's a big proponent of affordable housing, even though he
okay.
officially doesn't represent Westborough
Right.
anymore. We have a good working relationship to find out with whom, in addition, you know, basically ask him to make an introduction to the executive director and any key board members.
Super, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yep, good. Excuse me, I'm gonna run, because I've got to go across the street to talk to my friends over there about planning stuff.
Thanks, Hank.
Thank you.
Okay.
Again, it's been taking, I would not have allowed them to schedule it, but it's taken quite a while.
No,
to
go
get
for
this
it.
done.
Yeah,
Go
no,
for it.
Don't want to lose the opportunity.
We did a lot of work in a short period of time. I think we have to blame Ed. I think he
Yeah.
slows us
Hey,
down.
no, it's just a matter of maturity. We're at a point where we've got some stuff moving, we know what we're doing.
Right.
Thank you all.
Good luck, Hank. Thank you.
thank you, Hank.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
I'm gonna move over one just
Please
because.
do. Okay, so, does anyone else have any other business?
I'm,
Nope, she's thinking of something.
well, I'm just stewing on the, not stewing, I'm just thinking about an email that Alan had sent me regarding a question I had posed in a previous meeting related to housing search, and thinking about can the trust hire a case manager of sorts, a housing case manager, to provide housing search services to our community, because doing a housing search, trying to find affordable units, is really, really complicated and really, really time consuming. And for the folks who are, eligible for affordable housing, a lot of times they're folks who have multiple jobs, and it's just to try to navigate the housing world and attempt to maintain multiple jobs and responsibilities of parenting and all of that. It's just hard. And so to provide support to our community in that way, to me, seems like it might be a good use of our funds. And so I was thinking about, Alan was thinking creatively about how that might work. So I'm just resurfacing that question, I guess, but I'm not prepared to have a proposal at this point in time. I'm just kind of like thinking out loud about that as a potential use of our resources.
Okay, so what would you like the next steps to be? Research?
I think research.
Okay.
So one of the things that Hank just brought up was the fact that the housing authority has units that are sitting empty, right?
Well, yeah, and so the units sit empty because the way when someone applies for rental affordable housing on the application, they identify the communities they'd like to live in,
Right.
and there's a checkbox that says no preference.
Right.
Which means they're on the list in every single municipality.
Right.
So what happens is the DHCD maintains the prioritized list. So when a unit comes open, they send the first 10 or 20 to the housing authority.
Right.
The housing authority has to say, go walk down the list and say, do you want it? Here's
Yeah.
the packet.
Right.
And the people who are in Boston, who simply checked all, no preference, not realizing that that meant all 351 communities,
Right.
They'll say, well, no, right? Because they were thinking
Right.
Boston, Somerville,
Right.
Where they, the kids go to school, where they
Right.
work, et cetera. That's the problem, and you have to wait a certain period of time, and then the state gives the next 10 or 20, and you go through that process. The real issue is it's not an issue that the housing authority has, and there's no other way to fill those units. Those units have to be filled through that state lottery process.
I know. Right.
The real issue, of course, is that on the application process, people aren't getting the guidance.
Right. Right, exactly. And that's also where a housing search person could provide guidance. So when they are helping a community member here fill out state applications for affordable housing units, and they could talk to them about the fact that if you check off all, you're going to, because then once you get done, if you decline a unit, you only get a certain number of times that you get that you can decline a unit.
And then you go down to the bottom of the list.
And then you go down to the bottom of the list. So I've worked with folks in Boston who are chronically homeless who are filling out these applications for public housing. And they check off that box of, I don't have a preference of where I live. But then the problem is that they get a unit of, available to them in Westborough, and they're like, I don't know where Westborough is. I don't want to live in Westborough. And they can deny that unit, and then they can wait for the next unit to become available, but they can only do that a certain number of times, and then they get put back down at the bottom of the list. And so it's really, really important and it was really, really important for us as providers to educate our clients about, like, you want to be very specific about where you want to live, because otherwise, if you decline this, you're not going to be able to, you're going to be put down at the bottom of the list. So the same is true for us here with our residents here in Westborough, is educating them about that process. Because there's a whole process to trying to find a house and trying to find an affordable unit. And so having someone who can specialize that in our community to support our residents, I think would be hugely beneficial. So but I would like to do more research to figure out how that might work, and who would be the host of that that position, and what the need is, all of those things. So I'm putting it on our radar to kind of think about it, and I am willing to do that research to an extent, to the extent that I can.
Yeah, I'm willing to
So.
help in any way that I can. Do we know if there are examples of this in other communities, like what this might look like somewhere else? That would help me.
I know what it looks like in Boston, but
Awesome.
Boston is very
Boston,
different
yeah.
than Westborough, and
I'm
so
sure these lists are immense, so.
right.
And,
Um,
and there are in the Metro West areas some regional housing offices.
Yep.
That provide this type of service,
Mhm.
where the communities share the cost of the staff, the casework staff and case
Mhm.
managers,
well, cool.
to provide that assistance and guidance. And those offices also provide other functions as well.
Okay.
I think one of the regional housing offices is a housing trust that's funded by multiple communities. That does what we do, but I think they have 4 or 5 communities. That is their scope of, scope of influence. So if you guys can do the research and come back with options,
Yeah.
one of my questions is, does that role align with the strategic plan for youth and family services that they're working
Well, we're in the
towards?
middle of revising that strategic
Right.
plan,
So,
so I'd have to. It's part of our master plan as a community.
right,
So who owns that? So I need to look at the comparison between the master plan, youth and family services strategic plan, the senior center strategic plan too, because a lot of this has to do with elders and seniors in affordable housing too. So I'm wondering what part of their strategic plan, if they have one. And I know the senior survey is still happening, and so, but yeah.
okay. Excellent. I've got some other business to bring up. Something we've talked about in the past. I think the timing might be right to initiate it, and this goes into the part of our mission that's not just affordable housing, capital AH, but affordability in general, which is moderate income housing, and a first-time home buyer program. So the Massachusetts Housing Partnership did roll out, they run, just for public's benefit, they run a program with a number of banks called One Mortgage. It is a 30-year, it's for households that meet affordability requirements. It's a 30-year fixed mortgage at 3% with no PMI. Technically, the Mass Housing Partnership pays the PMI. And down payment typically 5%. Can be more, sometimes it can even be less. And the goal of the program is by lowering the total cost of ownership, by lowering the cost of the mortgage, you help families move into market rate housing if they couldn't otherwise make it, and make the bridge from needing affordable housing to be able, for people caught in the middle between being eligible for affordable housing and be able to afford the market. They just launched a program in gateway cities where Mass Housing Partnership has funding to, in addition to the mortgage, providing one-time grants
Yeah,
that either lower the down payment or pay points on the loan to lower the interest rate and lower the monthly cost. We had discussed previously, and it's in our goals, is to launch a first-time homebuyer program, and we estimated a pilot amount of funds to help provide a similar subsidy. Given that our other programs are moving forward and Rogers Road is going to take time, I'm wondering if this would be a good time for us to reach out to Mass Housing Partnership about establishing a first-time homebuyer program for Westborough. The general guidelines on their program is, one, it's someone who has to qualify for the one mortgage. So that's how you financially qualify people for it. The way this worked with their pilot in Boston is you haven't owned a primary residence in at least 10 years. And for Boston, you've been renting within the city limits of Boston for 3 years. And we could evaluate that. The other component that we had previously discussed in the program would be, or you qualify for the one mortgage and you're a town employee. So that incoming, is our fire department, police, and schools, and DPW look to recruit people. One of the incentives in things that would attract them to come work in Westborough would be the fact that if they qualify, there's assistance in being able to buy a home in Westborough. And so if people are open to it, I'm happy to make the initial contact and reach out to MSP to see how we might start that process.
I'm very much in favor of that.
Ken, thumbs up, thumbs down?
I like that idea, Alan. I do.
Okay, great. Other new I've got two other new business issues, and I'll keep it quick because we're already, well, we still have time, but we're ahead of schedule. The chair of the planning board approached me, as he's also on the committee that's looking at the new, housing rules for density, Community Housing Act, or related to being an MBTA community. And he mentioned that he sees a number of properties on East Main Street as good targets for redevelopment to either housing with affordability component or mixed use, commercial and housing. And so what I would like is just consensus that we should have that conversation. His thought was, even offering option, buying an option on the property. So when they're ready to sell, we have right of first refusal, or, there's a defined value calculation, or even potentially making offers on property. And I think it's an interesting concept. It's a very aggressive way to move forward. But I just wanted to get consensus that we should start those conversations and see if there's someone else who wanted to participate with me on that.
I'll participate with you on that. I don't know much about it, but I would really love to avoid another gas station downtown. So, if that alone,
Don't get me started about gas stations. If you've been watching the select board meetings, don't get me started. Okay. Okay.
No offense to our existing gas stations, but
No
yes.
offense. No offense taken. Okay, we'll do that. And finally, the town has a housing partnership committee. This committee is actually charged with identifying opportunities for affordable housing and helping developers navigate the process of getting permits. So they're
How is
supposed,
that different than us?
it's because they
They don't don't buy the property, do they?
They don't get involved in the actual development at all. So this would be, so for example, someone owns land and they're gonna subdivide it, and they're gonna, they buy 3 properties, single-family homes, and then redevelop it as 5.
Okay.
That means one of those 5 units under bylaw has to be affordable.
Yep.
They know nothing about affordable housing and what to do. They go to the Housing Partnership Committee and they literally walk them through the process to the point where they get the permits, which would include the affordability restrictions.
Got it.
Okay? And so they're really there as a service to private developers.
Okay.
The longtime chair of that committee stepped down and retired. I'm not sure, I can't actually tell you who's chair of the committee right now, or if they've even
They
met.
have not met. I'm on the committee.
You're on the committee, okay.
Yeah,
So-
so we have not met in the entirety of the time I've had a term on this committee,
Okay,
which is, I don't know how long. Maybe with pandemics got me all like sloppy with time.
right, but it's been a long
a
time.
pretty long
Okay.
time.
So the other thing the other thing that's pretty typical of housing partnerships committees is that they're members who get certified to review documents, so that when the town gets, if an affordable house is being sold and it was a part of a local initiative program, it actually, in addition to DHCD approving it and the state, the select board has to approve it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the Housing Partnership Committee that usually reviews the document and the DHCD rulings and recommends, lets the select board know when it's ready for approval.
Okay.
So my question here is, reaching out to that committee to get it
Yeah, I'll have to dig a little bit
reactivated,
at this
and
point.
if it can't, and if there's a feeling among the current committee members that's open to it, in some communities, the housing trust and the housing partnership committee merge. And so it comes under the,
Is a great idea.
so you have the organizational structure of the housing trust to help with that work, but you bring in the expertise from the partnership committee. But at the very least, I think we need to reach out to that committee and let them know what's happening, and we should be engaging with them as we do our projects as well.
For the trust, do we have 8 seats? How many seats are open? Like, how many people?
We have
can be
7,
on?
and we're fully,
7? Okay, can't remember.
we're fully staffed,
Okay, all right.
so, which is cool. That
So
said,
what if they merged, though?
it's a merger of responsibility. That would have to be worked out. I don't think we necessarily need to do that, but if
Nice.
there's a way that we can help that committee get on its feet and operating again, that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think it could even be beneficial with respect to the Housing Authority in Rogers Road, and,
Well, that's,
Right, like having a lawyer there and, well,
Yeah.
just, all these different people, of different specialties. Yeah, I think that would be very good. It would be very good.
well, it
You-
just brings me back to the question that I had earlier about, can we have a joint meeting between the trust and the housing authority to kind of hash this out? And it kind of makes me think that, is there opportunity for all 3 of these groups to come together with some regularity? I mean, I'm not saying like monthly or quarterly even, but like even just annually, to kind of talk about our joint, we all have a very similar mission and a very similar scope. And so how do we work together, as opposed to 3 separate entities who are working independently without knowledge of what the other is doing? I feel like if we can be at the same table at least one point.
I think we could, because as you mentioned that earlier, what came to mind is, we are at the 3-year anniversary of the Affordable Housing Forum, which is where all of this started, which was not just the Housing Authority and the Partnership Committee, but it was every town department and committee that had in any way, shape, or form, directly or indirectly, was involved in housing affordability. Affordable housing was the first time that all of the stakeholders were in the same room. And now, this trust is an outcropping, a result of that initial meeting, but doing another affordable housing forum that focuses on the committee specific to affordable housing, I could see having a conversation with the Housing Partnership Committee, the Housing Authority, ourselves, potentially representatives from the Planning Board, and the working committee that's dealing with the commuter
Yeah.
requirements.
Right,
Because that will significantly affect zoning,
right.
and affordable housing components going forward, and sort of reintroducing ourselves, you know, sort of redefining, you know, going back to that same format, which is who you are, what's your responsibility, where are your boundaries, and then a discussion of the needs and moving forward.
Yeah.
And sort of build that together, so.
Let's do it. Conference,
Okay.
forum.
A forum.
Woohoo!
A forum, okay, we can work on that as well. That was it, my couple of other business, sorry to
Yeah,
pile on.
all good ideas.
Anything else? Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Okay, a motion to adjourn, I guess technically it's supposed to be a roll call vote, so
Okay.
Ken,
And do you approve adjourning?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
okay, excellent.
Sorry, I'm just mesmerized. When you're not there, I'm looking at you folks now, but when you're not there, it's like you're just kind of like in a cloud.
Yeah.
It looks like the
understood.
Last Supper, doesn't it? That's what I always thought.
Yeah.
Let's not go there, okay. Leah,
McLean, yes.
Storm, yes.
Edinburgh, yes,
Armitage, yes.
we are adjourned, thank you very much, and
Thank
thank
you.
you Westborough TV.
All right.
Thank you, folks.